My name is Lena Marlowe, and I'm 34 years old. For as long as I can remember, I've been the one in my family who quietly holds everything together, the invisible thread stitching the seams no one else bothers to notice. I live alone now, in a small third-floor apartment in Portland. It's nothing fancy. Creaky floorboards, sunlight that hits just right around 3 p.m., and a balcony too tiny for guests, but perfect for one. It's peaceful here, filled with sketches and silence, a space I've carved out after years of being the reliable daughter, the quiet sibling, the one who doesn't cause trouble, but always shows up when there is some. If you've ever felt like the dependable one, the one people lean on but rarely listen to, then I think you'll recognize pieces of yourself in my story. And if you've ever set the table for others but were never invited to sit at it, this is for you. Before we dive in, take a moment to like this video, leave a comment if this resonates with you, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps bring these hidden voices to light, voices like mine, and maybe even yours. It was a quiet Tuesday afternoon, the kind Portland does best, misty and gray, the kind of weather that makes you want to curl up with tea and forget the world exists. I was curled on the couch, outlining pages for a children's book about a fox and a firefly, when my phone buzzed. Mom. Just seeing her name on the screen made my stomach drop. Not out of fear, but out of knowing. Knowing that she never calls to check in. She calls when something needs doing, when someone else needs saving. And like always, I was expected to pick up. The phone kept ringing. I stared at the screen for a second longer, then sighed and answered. Hi, Mom. Her voice came through crisp, efficient. Lena, sweetie, I need you to come early Friday. We're hosting a little celebration dinner for your brother's promotion. He just made senior architect at the firm. You know how important this is? I blinked. What dinner? Oh, I thought you knew. Her tone didn't skip a beat. Just a small gathering at the house, some of Ian's colleagues, a few important clients, nothing too big, but I need the dining room set. Candles, plates, that centerpiece you made for Christmas would be perfect again. And if you could swing by with those cloth napkins of yours? You always fold them so nicely. The request hit like a stone in my chest. I wasn't being invited. Not really. I was being assigned. I cleared my throat. Am I invited to the dinner? There was a pause. Then that airy, dismissive laugh I knew too well. Well, honey, it's mostly his professional circle. You wouldn't really know anyone there, but we really could use your help making everything look nice before they arrive. It was such a casual cruelty, dropped like a stone into a still pond. My heart sank, my fingers curling slightly against the phone. She didn't even hear it, how that sentence crushed me. Not good enough to be seated at the table, but essential to make it shine. Not valued as a guest, only useful as a servant. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Sure, what time? 4. That should give us time to plate the appetizers and light the candles. You're the best, Lena. We couldn't pull these things off without you. And just like that, she hung up. I sat there, phone in hand, the rain outside whispering against the windows like it knew something I didn't. My apartment suddenly felt smaller, tighter, like her voice had crept through the walls and rearranged the air. I glanced around at the life I'd built. My drawings pinned to the wall, the soft hum of my diffuser, the quiet independence I had worked so hard to protect. But one call from her, and it was like I was 12 again, being asked to tidy up while everyone else took credit. This wasn't about dinner. It was about a lifetime of being invisible. I sat motionless for a long time after the call ended. The phone was still in my hand, but I wasn't really holding it anymore. My mind was floating, not with anger, not yet, just with that dull ache of something familiar, being expected, not invited. I looked around my apartment, my plants, my sketches, my little ceramic fox on the bookshelf, things I'd chosen, nurtured, claimed, my life, curated with care. It was quiet here, safe, and yet her voice had managed to reach through the miles and shake the foundation. I'd spent years building a version of myself that didn't revolve around being needed. And yet the moment she called, I was pulled right back in, the helper, the preparer, the napkin folder. But something in me shifted. Maybe it was the tone in her voice. Maybe it was that laugh. Or maybe it was the way I hadn't even been told about the dinner until I was needed to set it up. I opened my phone, not to message her back, but to check a reservation app. The Rusted Spoon, a warm, rustic restaurant I used to love. I hadn't been in over a year. It was the kind of place with flickering candles and garlic in the air, where you could sit in a corner booth and just be. A table for one, tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. I hovered my thumb over the screen. There was guilt. Yes, a rising tide of it. What if they really couldn't manage? What if Mom snapped under the stress, or Ian's event was ruined because I wasn't there to light the candles? But under the guilt, something else stirred. Something warmer. Braver. What if, just once, they figured it out without me? What if I didn't rush in to fold napkins no one would thank me for? What if I didn't arrive 4 hours early, only to be ushered out before the actual dinner? What if I went somewhere I actually belonged? My thumb pressed confirm. A small thrill shot through me, like lighting a single match in a dark room. I set the phone down and let out a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. The screen lit up with a gentle confirmation. Your reservation is confirmed. For once, I wasn't making someone else's night easier. I was choosing myself. And that decision, simple as it was, felt like the first real rebellion of my life. Not loud, not angry, but quietly, profoundly mine. By the time Friday morning arrived, my decision had settled in like a quiet truth. I wasn't going. No excuses, no last-minute changes, just not going. But instead of a rush of relief, I felt something more complicated. A flicker of nerves, a ghost of the old me whispering, they'll be disappointed. They'll call you selfish. Still, I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't send the sorry something came up text, because that would still be me managing their emotions, still folding myself into a shape that made them comfortable. Instead, I got out of bed and brewed my favorite dark roast. I played soft music in the background, the kind that reminded me of rainy bookstores and quiet bravery. I let the stillness wrap around me. And then I opened my closet. It surprised me how nervous I felt choosing a dress. I wasn't dressing for anyone but myself, but somehow that made it feel even more sacred. I reached for a deep burgundy wrap dress I hadn't worn in ages. It hugged in the right places and made my eyes look like they held secrets. I ran my fingers over the fabric for a moment, like I was touching a version of me I'd kept folded away. I took my time getting ready. Not rushed, not flustered, not trying to beat traffic to the suburbs. I lined my eyes with care, dabbed on a warm shade of lipstick, and spritzed the perfume I usually saved for events that mattered. And tonight mattered, not because it was someone else's celebration, but because I was choosing to show up for myself. By 6:30, I was in my car, the sky fading into that dusky watercolor only Portland can paint. Streetlights blinked to life as I crossed the bridge, heading downtown. My phone buzzed twice in my bag, then once more. I didn't check. I didn't need to. I already knew what they said. Where are you? We need those napkins. Lena, this is really inconsiderate. Let them scramble. Let them wonder. Let them, for once, feel the absence of the person they always assumed would be there. The Rusted Spoon came into view, its windows glowing gold against the evening gray. I parked, stepped out into the crisp air, and exhaled. There was no spotlight waiting, no applause, just a table, one I didn't have to set. And tonight, for the first time in a very long time, I was going to sit at it. The moment I stepped through the doors of the Rusted Spoon, the world shifted. Warm light pooled across worn wooden floors. Soft jazz played in the background, the kind that doesn't beg for attention, but lingers in the air like memory. A waiter greeted me with a gentle smile, not surprised I was alone, not offering awkward sympathy. Just a simple, table for one? I nodded. Lena Marlowe, I have a reservation. Right this way. He led me to a corner table by the window. A small candle flickered beside the folded menu, casting golden shadows across the tablecloth. I slid into the seat, exhaling slowly, feeling like I'd just crossed some invisible border, not into a restaurant, but into my own space. Outside, the city moved on. Headlights gliding past rain-slicked streets, people rushing somewhere. But inside, everything felt still. I glanced around. A couple laughed at a nearby table, their heads tilted toward each other like a secret. An elderly woman dined alone near the bar, slowly savoring a bowl of soup with a paperback novel propped beside her plate. No one looked at me twice. I wasn't odd. I wasn't out of place. I belonged. For once, I wasn't watching the clock. I wasn't waiting to be called, summoned, needed. No one was texting me to ask if I could bring the napkins, if I'd remembered the table runner, if I could just light the candles because you do it so well. I ordered a glass of Pinot Noir and the crab cakes, my favorite. When the wine arrived, I let the first sip sit on my tongue, tasting every note. I leaned back in my seat, watching the candlelight dance, and something happened. Not loud, not dramatic, just peace. For the first time in years, I wasn't racing to make someone else's moment perfect. I wasn't the supporting act to someone else's spotlight. I wasn't the girl in the kitchen, arranging appetizers while laughter echoed from a room I wasn't invited into. This moment was mine, and back at my parents' house, I could picture it now, things were probably unraveling. Mom pacing the dining room, her voice clipped. "Where's Lena?" Dad fumbling to fold napkins. My brother Ian glancing around, confused and annoyed, because of course I'd always been there before, but I wasn't this time. And strangely, I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. As the waiter returned with my crab cakes, I smiled and thanked him. He nodded, placed the plate gently in front of me, and walked away. I picked up my fork. Let them figure it out. Tonight, I wasn't the helper. I was the guest. And I was finally, at the right table. The crab cakes were crisp and tender, perfectly seasoned, resting on a bed of arugula and lemon aioli. I took small, thoughtful bites, not because I wanted to stretch out the meal, but because I wanted to stretch out the moment, this rare, sacred feeling of stillness, the kind of quiet where nothing was expected of me. My phone buzzed. I ignored it. It buzzed again. Then again, short bursts, like little knocks on a door I wasn't ready to open. I reached into my purse anyway, not out of obligation, but curiosity. I flipped the screen face up, just for a second. 3 missed calls from Mom, 1 message. But it wasn't hers that caught my eye. It was a text from Dad. "We're sorry, Lena. We shouldn't have assumed you'd handle everything. Can we talk later?" I blinked, reading it again. Then a third time. Dad wasn't one for long messages, or for apologies, especially not written ones. He was a man of sighs and shoulder pats of saying, "You know we appreciate you," without ever quite saying it. And yet, there it was. "We're sorry." Not, "Where are you?" Not, "This is your fault," but an acknowledgement. I sat back in my seat, the phone resting on my lap, the weight of those words settling over me. For a moment, I didn't know what to feel. Relief? Surprise? A pang of longing? The message was short, but it cracked something open. A door. A possibility. A truth they may have started to see. That I was always there, not because I had nothing better to do, but because I cared. And because I was conditioned to carry everything in silence. I didn't text back. Not yet. Because tonight wasn't about fixing things. It wasn't about stepping back into the role I'd just begun stepping out of. It was about letting that message sit, just like I had so many times before, sitting with everyone else's needs while mine waited in the corner. Only this time, they could wait. I placed the phone gently on the table, screen down. I looked around the restaurant again. The music had shifted to something softer, slower. A couple danced briefly near the bar, their hands clumsy but happy. The elderly woman with the book was now sipping tea, her eyes on a fresh chapter. The world was moving, and for once I wasn't behind it, chasing my place. Dad had seen it, maybe just a glimpse, Maybe it would fade, but maybe, just maybe, it was a beginning. I lifted my wine glass, not in celebration, but in recognition of a crack in the armor, of what happens when you stop being silent, when absence finally speaks louder than presence ever could. A few days passed. The glow from that night at the Rusted Spoon lingered, but it was accompanied by something else, a quiet resolve that hummed beneath my skin. I knew what needed to happen next. Dad's apology had opened a crack, but the wall hadn't truly shifted until I spoke to the one who built most of it, my mother. So I sent her a message. "Can we meet for coffee? Just the two of us." She replied almost immediately. "Of course. Café Eloin, 2 p.m.? Short. Polite. No hint of suspicion, no warmth either. Just logistics. When I arrived, she was already seated, stirring her latte in that absent, mechanical way she always did when she was bracing for something. Her blazer was crisp, her posture perfect. Her eyes scanned the room once before landing on me. "Lena," she said, offering a small smile. "You look... well." "Thanks," I said, sitting down across from her. "You too." We exchanged pleasantries, about the weather, about her garden, the kind of small talk that fills space without saying anything at all. But I hadn't come here for silence. "I want to talk about the dinner," I said, gently but directly. She tilted her head, her expression carefully neutral. "You were upset you weren't there?" "No," I said calmly. "I was upset I wasn't invited." Her eyebrows lifted slightly. "But we needed help. You've always—" "That's just it, Mom," I cut in, not unkindly. "You always need me, but you rarely see me." She blinked. I could see her trying to process the words, maybe even replaying past moments in her head, but I kept going. "I've spent years setting tables, folding napkins, organizing everything behind the scenes, and I've done it quietly because I thought that's what being part of this family meant. But when you told me I wouldn't really fit in at Ian's dinner, something broke." Her hands stilled over her cup. "I'm not your assistant. I'm your daughter. And I need you to understand that I'm done being treated like the help." Silence fell between us, thick and heavy. Finally, she exhaled. Her voice was softer this time. "Lena, I didn't realize. I truly didn't. We've just always relied on you. And maybe that's the problem," I said gently. "You relied on me, but you never asked if I was okay with it." She looked down, nodding slowly. "You're right. I'm sorry." For a moment, neither of us spoke, but something in her face had shifted. Less guarded, more open. It wasn't a full repair, but it was something. A beginning. The days that followed weren't dramatic. There were no grand apologies, no sudden flood of gifts or emotional declarations, but something quieter, something far more meaningful, began to take shape. It started with a text from Mom. "How's your illustration project coming along?" No request, no checklist, just a question about me. I stared at the message for a full minute, unsure how to respond. Not because I didn't want to, but because I wasn't used to being asked, being seen. I typed back something simple, something honest. "It's going well. I'm working on a new character. Thanks for asking." A day later, Dad called. Not to remind me of someone's birthday or ask for help fixing his printer. He just wanted to chat. He told me a story from when I was 6. The time I got upset because Ian got a trophy for soccer and I didn't get recognized for drawing the team banner. I'd forgotten about it. He hadn't. "It's funny," he said, "how you always made things beautiful, but we never thought to thank you." His voice cracked a little at the end. Even Ian seemed to shift. When we crossed paths at a family gathering, he didn't throw me the usual, "You bring the good napkins?" Instead, he gave me an awkward side hug and said, "Dinner was weird without you there. Guess none of us knew how to fold a damn napkin." It wasn't poetic, but it was something. The biggest change came a few weeks later in a message from Mom. "We're having a small dinner Sunday. Would love for you to come, just as our guest. No prep needed. Promise, just as our guest." I read that line twice. When I arrived at the house, my chest tightened a little out of habit, expecting to be handed a tray or asked to adjust the place settings. But instead, Mom greeted me at the door with a hug and a quiet, "We're glad you're here." The table was already set, the roast chicken was in the oven, and no one looked to me for anything. I sat down next to Dad, who handed me a glass of wine and launched into a story about the time I tried to run a lemonade stand in the rain. Claire, for once, didn't roll her eyes. She actually laughed. For the first time, I wasn't performing. I was participating. I didn't feel like the help. I felt like family. And though things weren't perfect, old patterns don't vanish overnight, this felt different. Not a transformation, but the beginning of one. It's strange how much meaning a table can hold. For most of my life, I stood on the edges of them, arranging silverware, folding napkins into delicate shapes, lighting candles I'd never dined beside. I was the silent stagehand behind every family gathering, crafting the atmosphere so others could shine. But now, I was finally sitting down. At the most recent family dinner, I arrived on time. Not early, not frazzled, not with my arms full of platters or serving tools. Just me, wearing a blue knit dress and a quiet sense of self that had taken years to grow into. The dining room looked familiar, but something was different. The table was already set. Not perfectly, but lovingly. The candles were slightly crooked. The centerpiece was simple, a bowl of pears. But it was enough. Mom met me at the door. She didn't have that harried look in her eyes. Instead, she touched my arm and said softly, "No one sets a table like you, Lena. But tonight, I want you to just enjoy it." I stepped into the room and found my seat, already marked with a little place card handwritten in Mom's careful print. Lena, not, "Can you serve the drinks?" Not, "You'll be standing by the kitchen anyway." Just a seat, like everyone else. As the meal unfolded, I listened. I laughed. I told stories. Dad brought up the time I tried to draw every Disney princess in one sketchbook as a kid. Claire even asked if I'd help her redesign her firm's holiday cards, not because I was expected to, but because she liked my style. I looked around that table, one I used to orbit like a satellite, and realized something simple but powerful. I belonged here, not because I earned it through labor, not because I filled a need, but because I was Lena, their daughter, their sister, a person worthy of space, of voice, of rest. That table, once a symbol of exclusion, had become a quiet monument to growth, to change, to the girl who once folded napkins in the background, now raising a glass, smiling, present. It didn't erase the past. The ache of all those years still echoed faintly, but now it echoed in a room where I was finally seen. A few weeks after that dinner, I found myself sitting on my balcony, wrapped in a blanket, a cup of chamomile tea steaming in my hands. The sky was soft with dusk, and the hum of the city below felt distant, almost like another life. I thought back to that girl, the one who used to show up hours early, heart-pounding, wondering if anyone would even notice the napkins she'd ironed, the candles she'd lit, the hours she gave away without a second thought. And now, here I was. Not louder, not tougher, but clearer. I'd learned something in these quiet weeks. Choosing yourself doesn't mean abandoning others. It means refusing to abandon yourself. I'd spent so long thinking love was earned through sacrifice, that being needed was the closest thing I'd get to being wanted. But I was wrong. Love isn't proven by how much you give until you disappear. It's in being able to say, "This is who I am, and I deserve to take up space." The truth is, setting boundaries didn't push my family away. It pulled the truth forward. It asked them to see me, not for what I could do, but for who I was. And once they began to see that, the healing could finally begin. Not perfectly, not instantly, but honestly. And maybe you're listening to this thinking, "That's me. I'm the helper, the fixer, the quiet one they always count on but never thank." If that's you, I hope this story reminds you that you don't have to earn your place at the table by setting it for others. Sometimes the most radical thing you can do is sit down. So, to whoever you are out there, the forgotten middle child, the behind-the-scenes soul, the one who makes everything better for everyone else, this is your sign. Claim your space. Say no. Let the candles go unlit. Let someone else fold the napkins. You deserve more than their convenience. You deserve connection, belonging, rest. And if this story found its way into a soft spot in your heart, if it felt like someone finally said what you've been carrying in silence, then don't let it stop here. Like this video, leave a comment, tell me your story, and if you haven't yet, hit subscribe. Because here, we make space for the quiet ones, the strong ones, the ones still learning how to take up the room they've always deserved. Keep choosing you, and I'll meet you at the next story.